At 1, so it's bye-bye from me. And on BBC One, we now join the BBC's news teams where you are.
The headlines on Reporting Scotland this Wednesday lunchtime. Nicola Sturgeon has announced she's resigning as First Minister after more than 8 years in the job. As planning begins to find her successor, we'll look back on Miss Sturgeon's time in politics. Hello there, good afternoon. Nicola Sturgeon has announced her resignation as First Minister after more than 8 years in the job. She told a media conference she knew in her head and in her heart it was time to stand down. Miss Sturgeon is the longest serving First Minister and the first woman to hold the position. She's staying in office until a successor is elected. Well, let's speak to our political editor, Glenn Campbell. Glenn, has this come as a surprise?
Yes, this was a surprise announcement, a sudden announcement from the First Minister. Whilst there's been plenty of speculation about her future, much of it fuelled by comments she's made herself from time to time, I certainly thought that she might continue until the next UK general election. She has decided otherwise, that now is the time to go, and she has been on the scene right since the beginning at Holyrood. She's put in an epic shift as both First Minister and before that Deputy First Minister, 16 years almost in government, and that would take its toll, wear down any politician. I think it has done so to some extent with Nicola Sturgeon. There are, of course, many current pressures on her, a huge backlog in the NHS, a teachers' strike, the ongoing rows over the management of transgender prisoners and the implementation of a bottle deposit scheme. But in her resignation statement, Nicola Sturgeon was keen to stress that her decision was not a response to these immediate problems.
I know it might seem sudden, but I have been wrestling with it, albeit with oscillating levels of intensity for some weeks. Essentially, I've been trying to answer two questions. Is carrying on right for me? And more importantly, is me carrying on right for the country, for my party, and for the independence cause I have devoted my life to? I understand why some will automatically answer yes to that second question. But in truth, I have been having to work harder in recent times to convince myself that the answer to either of them, when examined deeply, is yes. And I've reached the difficult conclusion that it's not.
So Glenn, what happens next?
Well, Nicola Sturgeon remains First Minister and leader of the SNP, but her party will now have to come up with a timetable and a process for finding her successor. And when Alex Salmond stood down, it was pretty obvious that Nicola Sturgeon would be the next First Minister at that point. Right now, the answer to the question is much harder, but I'm sure a number of leading figures in the SNP, including cabinet ministers, potentially Angus Robertson, the Constitution Secretary, and the Finance Secretary, Kate Forbes, will be considering their options. Whoever takes over will have to deal with all the problems I mentioned earlier and the key mission of the SNP to try and break the deadlock over independence. Nicola Sturgeon has certainly concluded that that is not something that she can do.
Glenn, thanks for joining us. Well, Nicola Sturgeon has had a remarkable journey in politics. She joined the SNP as an activist at the age of 16 before becoming an MSP, and she's served in government since 2007. Our political correspondent Andrew Kerr has been looking back at Miss Sturgeon's time so far in public life.
Nicola Sturgeon has dominated the political stage, not just in Scotland, but in the UK. A remarkable and long career at the top of Scottish politics has now come to an end.
To make the point, first of all, that Ravenscraig and the other Scottish steel plants could be bought at a minimal cost to the Scottish people.
Spurred into politics during the Thatcher era in Ayrshire, the young politician attempted to make the case for the SNP in TV studios in 1992. A law career ended and she became a lawmaker, elected to the new Scottish Parliament in 1999. With John Swinney bowing out as party leader in 2004, a formidable new partnership was born, Salmond and Sturgeon. The old party boss saw an opportunity for the SNP in 2007 and they won the Holyrood election, First Minister and Deputy. The partnership was successful and the people voted in a majority SNP administration in 2011. The road to the referendum was embarked upon. It was not to be though. Scotland said no in 2014 and Salmond exited the stage. It was Sturgeon's time and there was that pop star style tour around the country. The next year, opponents were virtually wiped off the map in the 2015 Westminster election. Brexit reignited the independence campaign. Nicola Sturgeon continued to fight the UK government and also with her predecessor Alex Salmond over sexual harassment complaints. Then the pandemic gripped the nation. Nicola Sturgeon's handling of the crisis boosted her popularity ratings.
I'll start with the usual report on today's COVID statistics.
Now the government seems mired in the row over the transgender issue, while the party struggles with independence next steps. It's been 8 long years for Nicola Sturgeon. Her talents will be much sought after elsewhere, as the party she loves now seeks a new leader. Andrew Kerr, reporting Scotland.
And there's much more in this story, including background and analysis on the BBC Scotland News website. Well, let's get to the rest of today's news now. And teachers are deciding whether to accept a new pay offer. It's for a 6% rise in the current year and another 5.5% in the new financial year, which starts in April. The council body COSLA says it represents an 11.5% pay increase over 2 years. Teaching unions want a 1-year 10% rise. The biggest teachers' union, the EIS, is looking at the offer today and deciding whether to put it to members and call off upcoming strikes. A British man killed in Ukraine has been named by friends and family online as Jonathan Shenkin from Glasgow. A family tribute on social media said the 45-year-old died as a hero in an act of bravery as a paramedic. The statement added that he made the ultimate sacrifice to defend values we all believe in. The family of a mental health patient who died after being restrained in a Fife hospital have accused prosecutors of imposing a veil of secrecy over the case. The Crown Office has instructed the police watchdog to look into Joseph Snedden's death in Victoria Hospital in Kirkcaldy. A post-mortem report said he died after being restrained for at least 4 hours in April last year. OK, time for the weather now. Here's Kirstine.
Good afternoon to you. After a cloudy and wet morning of weather, it's an improving picture for many this afternoon. Skies brightening along with some spells of sunshine. Still some showers though for the Northern Isles, the Western Isles, Skye, the North West Highlands and Argyll, becoming lengthier and more frequent as the afternoon progresses, with perhaps the old rumble of thunder and hail. Strong winds for the Western and Northern Isles and highs of around 10 Celsius. To this evening and tonight, it'll bring a good deal of cloud along with some outbreaks of rain through central and southern areas, becoming quite persistent through Dumfries and Galloway and the borders during the early hours. A clearer spell though across northern Scotland tonight, along with a scattering of showers and perhaps a touch of frost for some sheltered rural areas, for most though holding up around 4 to 7 Celsius. Tomorrow starts with a good deal of cloud. The rain will gradually fizzle and fade away, and again skies will brighten for many as we go through the day. Just the odd shower lingering for the Northern Isles and the north coast. Now looking ahead to Friday, and we'll see an area of low pressure moving in, bringing outbreaks of rain and high winds. For much of Friday, we have a Met Office yellow warning in place. Gusts for exposed hills and coasts of up to 75 miles per hour, which could well prove disruptive. Even inland though, gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour, but improving slowly later in the day.
Thanks, Kirstine. We're back with a special extended Reporting Scotland at 6:30 tonight from everyone on the Lunchtime team. Bye for now.